I did have specific questions around Marie Antoinette, and like I think that the music choices were probably surprising to many, shocking to the genre of what that type of period piece, quote unquote, is. But like, what were the challenges around that?
Well, that it was a period piece. So because it was a period piece, it meant I had really three jobs. One was the period music. Two was the kind of emotional, use my records to create a story and score the movie, because there was no composer. There was no composer hired on that movie. We decided, really the only thing that Sofia and I did decide was that it was going to be like Lost in Translation. So, meaning it was mostly going to be all source music. But we didn't say, oh, let's use New Order or Adamant but Sofia had referenced Adamant and Bow Wow Wow in her visual book. So she had put that into it. And I just eventually just went there with it, and it just seemed to work. But so you had that music, and really that music was all over the place. People say, oh, it's all like new romantic or whatever. No, it's not. That's just a couple of cues. You've got Bow Wow Wow, so you have an Adamant, so you have that style. But then you had bands like Windsor for the Derby in the radio department that were brand new indie, very indie rock bands. I mean, I had to go to Sweden to find the radio department. They weren't like in my record store. Those records weren't here. I can't remember how I found Windsor for the Derby. And so you had contemporary artists, and then you had Air, and you had some of my I always brought my old friends in. I got Kevin Shields to remix I Want Candy. Derrick, I always say that I think it's harder to be a music supervisor than to be a film composer in a lot of ways, because you still have to score a scene, but to find music is sometimes like a needle in a haystack. Whereas if you know what it sounds like or whatever, you could sit at a keyboard or whatever, you could put a band together, you could make something in a day, no problem. But sometimes it takes a really long time. Like with Marie Antoinette, for me to get where I got with it, it took, like, I couldn't figure out what that movie sounded like. The stuff that I got very early on was like the Aphex Twin, kind of like the prepared piano stuff, because that sounded like opulent. It sounded like, the piano didn't exist in Marie Antoinette's time, but the glass harmonica did. The late 1700s was a really rich and interesting time for the experimentation and the development of musical instruments. There were so many weird instruments coming out at that time. And with the movie being a decent budget Hollywood movie, I spent like days in like museums in Paris and studying these instruments and like getting into that kind of world, which was really interesting. And then trying to put that into the movie. Though I think the only thing we really got into the movie, other than the, harpsichord and Marie Antoinette played the harp. She sang, we did do that. In fact, that's the song that she sings in that movie, because I'm like such a nerd. It's a song that Marie Antoinette really could have sang, and she is partially credited with the song. So all the music that's played in that movie could have really existed at the time. Now, granted, when we recorded like Vivaldi, we did our own kind of Bob Fosse kind of version. But yeah, all the period music is spot on, like the harpsichord stuff, the Couperin, the Scarlatti, the all of the, when they're eating, the Boccherini and all that kind of stuff. Even when they get married in the church, that's a piece by Gabriel Nevers, who was the church organist at Saint-Sulpice for like 85 years. I mean, can you imagine being in the same band for 85 years?
I don't know if I'm reading this incorrectly when you said with the internet it's less possible, but do you mean like with the budgets and films that because there wasn't that ready access to all this information online, you had the budget to go to these places and really nerd out and learn? Is that what you meant?
What I meant was that now, I mean, this is like 20 something years ago. I mean, the internet was not a part of it. There was no like type in, a few keywords and ideas would come up. You had to go find them physically. Like I spent all of my time, months and months, in record stores in Paris and in LA for, depending on, whatever the movie was. I mean, I went to Sweden to visit the radio department, and in going there and going record shopping, one of the challenges in Marie Antoinette is that Sofia, originally there were 3 opera scenes in the movie. And I didn't really like that era of opera music. I found it to be I just didn't like it. I didn't think it was good. I liked later opera. I liked the Wagner and I liked some of the dark, weird stuff. But, no, I'm not a big fan of like those Mozart operas and a lot of those sort of mid to 1700s European operas. But I had to find 3 for Sofia to shoot to. And they also needed to be musically good. It had to be something that I liked and that I thought was going to score the scene emotionally, but be a piece of opera music. And it took a month of me listening to this music over and over again. And then one day it clicked. It's like, I like this piece. And then once I found a piece that I liked, I started kind of collecting more, kind of led me down this rabbit hole. For one thing, the composer Gluck, who is Austrian, who Marie Antoinette had sort of, she was Austrian. So, he was her teacher, I think, for a while and stuff. But he was, I think, the first guy to ever put an oboe into the orchestra. And I found the oboe, I love the oboe. And so this was a reason for me to start, zeroing in on stuff that had oboe in it and stuff like that, and sort of finding what I liked in opera. And then once I did it, I put the mix together in like a day. So it was a month of kind of training myself, of figuring out what I liked. And then once I figured that out, I could have a really strong opinion. And then the last opera piece that happens from Castor and Pollux is just like, that felt like a piece of music that like Susie Sue fans would like. The Cure, it's opera music, but it's like Enya on heroin. I mean, it's just this insane piece of music. It's so beautiful. And the thing is all this music had to have been stuff that she really could have listened to. I wanted it to be authentic in that way. So there you go.